Welcome. We are here explaining the joke. In the beginning of everything, when dirt and sky had just been birthed and water had yet to start flowing, a formless husk was kneaded by hands of light. The first golem, Adam, was created, and with a soul placed inside, he became the first human. While the term was coined much later, this is one of the first literary examples of a mech, in the Bible of all places. Isn't that weird? Humanity has always been crazy about having these near humans at their beck and call, giving them a taste of godhood themselves. But is this the right way to incorporate mechs in stories? I'm not saying that there's never been a story that has done mechs correctly, but let's look at the general tropes they tend to fall into. Starting with For the sake of clarity, PG, or parental guidance, is a term used to rate the appropriate range to see a movie or show. So, movies tend to try and fit into the broader PG ratings so that they can try and make the most amount of cash money. This results in mechs that are just there so the writer can include scenes with bloodshed. Oil. Shed. This clearly isn't blood, it's just oil. Bloody oil. This ends up happening a lot with Aliens as well, where blood is just given a hue shift and suddenly kids aren't traumatized. This is the weakest reason for having mechs in your story, because more often than not, they're just trying to get around age ratings while still showing the kiddies some gruesome fights. This ends up resulting in a muddled story that pretends to be for adults, but we all know the audience is leaving that cinema with their parents. These types of mechs, unfortunately, also end up being part of the next category. Let's look at when you want to have superheroes, but also want to pretend you have a realistic twist on the genre. These androids, or cyborgs, or anything else you want to call them, are basically humans plus. Stronger, smarter, better in practically every way. These sometimes come in the form of controlled mechs like in Pacific Rim or Iron Man. These end up being the worst offenders of this trope, as they serve only to power up a character while ignoring any other element to the melding of machine and flesh. But when we refer to the regular use of human plus, the conflict presented by these characters is either the loss or discovery of their humanity. While the conflict between being a machine and human is very interesting, it's rare that these characters offer anything more than that. And this begs the question, why? Why do machines have to yearn to be like us? The only thing they end up lacking is a heart or soul. But never do we have a character that tries to understand, to learn what machines do. It does make sense that we, as their creators, know everything they do. We built them. But there are several examples of gods in almost every mythology looking down at their creations with genuine intrigue. While in those stories, humans tend to try and learn what the divine is like, only a handful of those tales end with them actually trying to achieve godhood. And speaking of these metaphorical tales of humans and mechs, let's talk about our final trope,
See the invisible, row, fight the power, touch the untouched.
Capitalism and dictatorship. Those are all the allegories. HAL 9000, 1984, Blade Runner, Black Mirror, WALL-E, Short Circuit, even goddamn robots.
I have a sister! An ugly sister!
Yes, there are other stories with more nuanced takes like Isaac Asimov's I, Robot or even The Iron Giant. But most of the times, when you see a robot or an AI in a story that wants to try and push any moral, you will win a good chunk of bets if you predict one of those two. Don't misunderstand me. I agree with the points these movies make, but mechs were so quickly put into this box of the objective answer isn't always the morally correct one for the survival or growth of the species. But Smart Robot is actually dumb and he not know that. And I just think we can do better than that, guys. Mechs can be so much more nuanced than what we give them credit for. It's a simple matter of understanding what makes each cog spin, how each hinge bends, and how do magnets work? So let's try to give mechs a fair shot. Let's start with This one is both the easiest and hardest trope to fix. The easy solution is to stop appealing to kids, but that's where the money is, so that's harder than it sounds. But let's look at another solution, and this one's a doozy. Just remove the blood. I mean oil. You can keep the fighting, you can keep the explosions, you can even keep every dumb one-liner that preschools and redditors will quote for months. You might have to tone down some of the fight scenes, but suddenly you have an action-packed action series that can focus on much more creative moments instead of throwing a bucket of oil at the screen every time a robot lands a punch. Now, when we talk about things get trickier. For starters, we need to stop making every mech humanoid. I mean seriously, look at these pictures. At this point, you can just cover a person in tinfoil and call it a day. But that's not enough, unfortunately. Because sometimes, even when the robots have more animalistic traits or don't have a fixed shape, they still act like humans. This is hard to do in general, but mechs walk a thin line between the human and the alien. They were made by us, but at the same time, they don't understand us, much in the same way that we sometimes can comprehend them. Because that's only natural. I mean, ask any programmer how many times they were just confused while looking at their own code. This point is doubly important when you're writing alien mechs. A technology we can't comprehend in a hunk of metal that still doesn't perceive what its creators are. How would they perceive a completely different set of intelligent living beings? This once again can be further explored while we try to fix our last trope. How do we solve mech?
Fight the power!
But before we do that, let's find something to put in the thumbnail. Japan loves its mecha, and while not my cup of tea, I understand the appeal. But let's look at a good example of mixing giant mecha with a dash of allegory, and an example of not doing that. The story of Gurren Lagann starts in the caves, where two miners are digging for gems. As the story goes by, they find a small mech and use it to live up to their motto: "My drill will pierce the heavens." With each episode, they find themselves in higher and higher stakes, to the point where they're just throwing galaxies at their enemies. These gigantic stakes almost seem like a satire of the genre, and while they do poke a little fun at it, that isn't the goal. This story is about humanity, and how it keeps trying to reach greater heights. Each mech, a step in our evolution. That drill that pierces the heavens is symbolic to our eternal journey up. Because once we get a taste of the skies, we never want to land again. Pacific Rim, on the other hand, is about a mech pilot who loses his brother in a fight and becomes traumatized, as these mechs are so big that they need two people to coordinate them. Throughout the movie, he has to begin trusting his new co-pilot, using the mech as an allegory for the union of these two pilots, trusting one another to the point where they become a single person, or in this case, mech. This isn't egregious by any means. It's a relatively simple plot and a relatively nice message. But the entire movie is about this message. It really isn't an allegory when it's also the plot, is it? This mech might as well not exist. Give them a gun that needs two people to hold, and we get the same story. And honestly, I feel that's a disservice to mechs, because they can be so much more than that. Mechs give you the chance to take a good look into the mind of their creator. I don't mean the author, but the artificer, the engineer, the magician that created each mech. Compare how we humans created gods in our stories. We say how they shaped us, either in their image or containing what they lacked. But we were the ones who wrote them like that. Compare how each god looks at us, from the Greek mythology's near familial relationship they have with their gods, to the Chinese tales of divinity in the nature that was around them. We can even see how Christianity sees God as something that can barely be comprehended. These are our gods, our creations, our mechs. And when they're created, our culture, our experiences, those all show up as bumps and scratches when we mold them into life. Once they're in the world, they need to exist alongside their creator, even if they're long gone. Because that combination of cogs, that shape, it all has a reason to be. But we need to be shown who made that choice, how they pride themselves in what they made, or maybe they try to hide their creation. This can never be done with a mech that simply pops into existence. Because mechs, despite lacking humanity, need it. And the humans, the gods that shaped them, need to stand with them. So, what makes a good mech? You. As long as you're willing to mold it in your image. Thank you so much for watching. If you managed to hold on until the end, congratulations, and write in the comments below your favorite mech, story, movie, game, whatever. Also remember to like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.